Donald Trump used his first NATO summit on Thursday to demand European countries pay more towards their defense. In an often uncomfortable speech, the US president lectured an audience of European leaders that included Theresa May, Emmanuel Macron of France and Germany's Angela Merkel. NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations, Mr. Trump said, while other leaders looked on awkwardly. 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. In a speech to dedicate a memorial to the Berlin Wall and the 9/11 attacks, Mr. Trump called for a moment's silence for the victims of the Manchester terror attack. Terrorism must be stopped in its tracks, or the horror you saw in Manchester, and so many other places, will continue forever, he said. He called on NATO to reposition itself to fight terrorism and focus on immigration. You have thousands and thousands of people pouring into our various countries and spreading throughout, and in many cases we have no idea who they are, he said. The NATO of the future must include a great focus on terrorism and immigration. President Trump was widely expected to reaffirm the US commitment to Article V of the NATO treaties, under which all NATO allies pledge to come to the aid of a member under attack, but he only made a passing reference to the fact the article was invoked after 9/11. Instead, he devoted most of his speech to demanding NATO's European members increase their defense spending, even claiming that many countries owe massive amounts of money from past years and not paying in those past years. Britain is one of only 5 NATO members that currently meet the alliance's target of spending 2% of GDP on defense that was agreed in 2006. NATO members have agreed in 2014 to hit the target by 2024, leaving Mr. Trump claiming that allies owed billions for years of underpayments. Mr. Trump was also seen muscling himself to the front of group of leaders during the summit, firmly pushing aside the leader of soon-to-be member Montenegro. Footage showed Mr. Trump pushing his way past Prime Minister Duško Marković, then confidently adjusting his suit as he emerged in the front of the group, closer to NATO head Jens Stoltenberg. Earlier, Mr. Trump and Emmanuel Macron, France's newly elected young president, exchanged an awkward power handshake at their first face-to-face meeting. Each president gripped the other's hand with considerable intensity, their knuckles turning white and their jaws clenching and faces tightening, according to a report by the White House Correspondents' Pool. Philip Rucker of The Washington Post said, Trump tried twice to release and Macron held on tight. It was quite a handshake, 2 alphas. Mr. Trump is known for his habit of pumping people's hands and then yanking them forcefully towards him in a gesture that psychologists believe is intended to demonstrate dominance. The 39-year-old Mr. Macron may have been prepared for his American counterpart's strong-arm handshake and simply held on tighter. In the run-up to the French election, Mr. Trump expressed support for Marine Le Pen, Mr. Macron's far-right opponent. But on Thursday he said Mr. Macron ran an incredible campaign and had a tremendous victory. All over the world they're talking about it. The two leaders disagree on several key issues, including climate change, which Mr. Trump has bluntly dismissed. Mr. Macron is reluctant to back Mr. Trump's demand for NATO to join the anti-ISIL coalition in Syria and Iraq, but he has pledged France will meet NATO's 2% target on defense spending. A few hours before Mr. Trump met with European leaders in Brussels, Barack Obama used an appearance at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate to issue a thinly veiled attack on his successor. The world order is at a crossroads, Mr. Obama told a crowd of 70,000. In this new world we live in, we can't isolate ourselves, we can't hide behind a wall. Sharing a stage with Ms. Merkel before she flew to Brussels, the former president did not mention Mr. Trump by name, but spoke out against his policies. We have to push back against those trends that would violate human rights or suppress democracy or restrict individual freedoms, he said. It was Mr. Obama's first major international appearance since the end of his presidency, and there was no mistaking the symbolism of his presence alongside Ms. Merkel close to where the Berlin Wall once stood. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe below and we'll see you soon.